All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Wednesday, September 18th, and we are looking at two active systems today here in the Atlantic. We do have Major Hurricane Humberto. As it does pull away from the eastern United States, it will track very close to the tiny island of Bermuda here this afternoon, producing at least tropical storm force conditions with possibly hurricane force conditions. We can also see the remnants of Tropical Storm Imelda dumping heavy rain across parts of the East Texas coastline. And then down here in the open Atlantic, we do have the beginning of Tropical Storm Jerry that was upgraded at 5 a.m. from the National Hurricane Center. That will check generally off to the west northwest over the next few days and be in vicinity of the Bahamas by the weekend. So a lot going on here today in the Atlantic. The only thing I wanted to note here, interesting feature from Hurricane Humberto as it does move away from the coastline. We actually have upper level high pressure spilling in from Canada. And you can see the clouds in this region where I'm putting the arrows are indicating colder, drier air is moving down from the north. And what's actually happening is Humberto's flow on the back side of the storm is actually pushing this air southward. And you can see the little remnants of a backdoor cold front right here moving backwards towards Florida. Typically, cold fronts sweep in like this, and they move in from southwest to northeast. However, today the backside flow of Humberto is causing a backdoor front, and that's going to push a little bit cooler air into parts of the southeast over the next few days. So a little bit of a parting gift from our big friend here. And then, that was just something I wanted to point out was interesting. So, moving right along here, Hurricane Humberto, just a quick blurb here again, 115 mile an hour major hurricane here this morning, and the storm is expected to pass once again very close enough to Bermuda where hurricane warnings are in effect. You can see the tropical storm force wind field will more than cover Bermuda as it passes, and then the hurricane force wind field going almost 70 miles out from the center now will pass. I mean, it'll skirt or just barely get over them. So they definitely could see some hurricane force wind gusts at least, if not an outright sustained hurricane force condition for a period of time. But then Umberto will move off to the north and get absorbed in the jet stream by the weekend and will not be an issue going forward, and it will move away. So nothing much to worry about there. And also, I want to talk real quick about the remnants of Tropical Storm Imelda that came ashore near Houston yesterday. We are still looking at a very heavy rainfall event around and east of Houston, Texas today, where we're looking at anywhere from 4 to 15 inches of rain possible in parts here, especially in these little narrow corridors where we see the rainfall totals approaching and exceeding a foot in some cases. So definitely be on the lookout for that in this area. This will be very flooding rain. Not something that's super uncommon for the area, but definitely not something you want to mess around with, and something you should very much take seriously and be careful any traveling in this area here today and tomorrow, as Imelda's leftovers will be very slow to crawl away from the coastline. So let's talk about Tropical Storm Jerry. This is definitely our biggest player here this morning, and we'll go ahead and get a bit more zoomed in on the tropical storm here today. Do we have a floater on this thing yet? Hey, we do. Look at that. All right, so this is Tropical Storm Jerry in all of its glory here this morning. We'll go ahead and expand this out a little bit further. And the first thing you're going to notice about Jerry is all these clouds around the edge of the storm. Notice all this frilly clouds up in the higher levels. This is indicating the storm has great outflow and it's very light wind shear being impinged on it. So we also see the first band wrapping back into the storm, which tells us that the storm's already being developed banding features. So it looks like Jerry is looking fairly healthy this morning. There's probably some good thunderstorm activity up under this cirrus mask here. We switched to infrared satellite imagery. We can see a lot of these colder cloud tops are already starting to appear in the storm. We have about 2 or 3 right there. And overall, Jerry is going to intensify today. It is under a pretty good environment right now, and it will enjoy a favorable environment for the next few days. Looking at the forecast track, we do see this general west-northwest motion just being pretty much guided by high pressure to its north for the next few days. And we do see the Hurricane Center by Friday morning has this thing becoming a hurricane. So that looks like to be in pretty good agreement. But then pretty much from Friday to about Saturday afternoon, Jerry will begin to see some unfavorable effects due to wind shear and dry air. So we do expect its intensity to maybe slow down and get capped off a little bit. But we'll have to see. The storm isn't too big right now, so smaller storms are a little harder to forecast in terms of intensity. But we will see Jerry approach hurricane status, at least as it does approach, and go north of the Windward Islands. So looking at the track from here, we do see the Hurricane Center does have the turn near the Bahamas starting with a bit of a decrease in forward speed by Monday afternoon. But I do want to show or note that basically right here is about where our fork in the road is. We're going to have one or two scenarios where Jerry either turns out to sea and kind of follows the same break that Humberto makes in the high pressure ridge, or a strong enough Jerry may actually slip a bit further south. I made a mistake in my video last night. I said that a weaker Jerry was going to go further south, but I meant to say a stronger Jerry. It's typically the rule of thumb that a weaker storm will drift further west and a stronger storm will want to turn, but Jerry is actually going to be the opposite case. We can see in the upper level flow as I take this out a couple days. So we're going to move Jerry along. So Jerry is right here. This is like Thursday or so. We go into Friday, into Saturday. We can see here that some models actually do wind up trying to dissipate the storm a little bit, but at 500 millibars, essentially what's going to happen is Jerry is going to round the edge of this big high pressure in the mid levels, and it's going to want to turn and kind of follow this opening right here at the edge of the high pressure, which would show that indication of it turning around the Bahamas and moving out. However, if we go to the upper levels of the atmosphere, go up to 250 millibars, we see the flow is very different, and high pressure to the north of the storm may actually try to force that wind flow out of the southwest. And if that is the case, if Jerry is a strong storm when it approaches the Windward Islands and Leeward Islands and Puerto Rico and all that in this area, if Jerry is strong right here, it might feel this flow around this upper level high and be shunted further south than the models are maybe giving us right now. And the further Jerry gets southward, the less it is likely to feel that steering weakness and want to turn up into it. So there's definitely a couple scenarios on the board where this storm may still be an issue for the East Coast. We can see this also in the ensemble models, let's say the UCMWF models. A large portion of these models turn Jerry out to sea. All these solutions here are what have been the current thinking over the last few days. However, we see now there are a few outliers. There's a few outliers on the left side of this cone, and all of these members here of the ensemble, that basically an ensemble is a model that's ran over and over and over with slight changes to try to see if something could happen that we maybe don't anticipate with the operational runs. And notice all of these runs here are strong runs. They're all deeper, darker colored, indicating that it thinks if the storm is strong enough, it may actually slip south of that steering flow and become a problem for the Bahamas and potentially Florida. And that is not off the table right now at any point yet. We still have to watch this thing. It's still likely to turn. The most likely solution is it does find the weakness and move away. But again, there are worlds where this thing does follow that south part of the cone, which would spell big problems for Florida. So please don't sleep on this one yet. It's far too early to make any calls, and until we get this thing near Puerto Rico and see how the steering flows are setting up and how Jerry responds to the unfavorable environment, it's going to hit by about Friday, Saturday. And if it's a strong hurricane or if it's a weak tropical storm or whatever the case may be and where exactly it is, will determine if it wants to turn or if it wants to slip further south and move towards Florida and the Bahamas. So everyone needs to be on alert and on their guard, and there's many solutions from there. So we'll just have to watch it very carefully and stay alert, and that's all you can do. So that's about what I got for you this morning, guys. We're just looking elsewhere in the tropics. We do have another wave following Jerry with a 30% chance of development. It'll generally take the same sort of track over the next few days. And then we also have three active storms in the Pacific with a fourth area of interest behind them. These are generally moving northwest while Kiko kind of moves away. And the Central Pacific is also monitoring a few waves around Hawaii. So very active time in the tropics, and we're also very much ahead of schedule now. So, and we expect to continue that trend through the rest of September at least. So that's what I got for you this morning. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.